Hey, all Dave here. Welcome to my first ever movie night with Trolley Dave. I've been saying for a while that I wanted to. Yo, Chris, how's it going, Sixtra? You okay, mate? I wasn't expecting anybody to actually turn up for this, so thank you for coming. Sixtra is the guy who created the avatar for my movie channel, and I very much appreciate it, mate. It's an awesome one and much better than I was going to come up with, so thank you. So, yeah, I've been meaning to do this for a very long time, for like months and months and months. I'm a huge film fan, and it's just something I love talking about films, especially horror films. So I've been meaning to do it for a while, and I decided yesterday I might as well just, dive into it. And I wasn't really sure what to do. So I figured a good way to start would be just to do like a 10 film, like you see the other channels doing like 10 films you ought to see kind of thing. And so I thought 10 horror comedies that are kind of obscure that I think everybody should watch. So this is 10 horror comedies that I think everybody should watch and that doesn't get enough love. They're not in any particular order. This isn't like a top 10 or anything. These are just 10 films that I think people should be watching. Hey Rev, how's it going? This is on my main channel. I do have sort of a channel that I'm kind of wanting to do all the film stuff on so that the two don't really cross over, but I can't really do live streams on the film channel part yet until I have a certain amount of subscribers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stream on here and then I'm going to take this and put it on the film channel so that it doesn't clutter up the actual main channel. I've got 10 films here that I think are quite obscure, and I think the way I'm going to go about it until I sort of figure out exactly how I'm going to do all this is I'm going to play the trailer and then talk a little bit about the film. So the first film is one called Housebound. It's on Shudder at the moment, and it's a New Zealand film. I'm going to go with Housebound first, which is a New Zealand comedy, and you can find a New Zealand comedy horror, and you can find this one on Shudder, or at least Shudder in the UK. I'm guessing it's probably on in the US one as well. And it stars Morgana O'Reilly as Kylie Bucknell, and it's basically about a woman who's a drug addict, and she gets busted, and she ends up being put on house arrest and basically starts to have stuff happen in the house that makes her kind of nervous and makes her paranoid. We'll check out the trailer and I'll give you some of my thoughts on it. 2 moments while I call up the trailer. Okay, so this is yeah. It's a multicultural audience. What can I say? So yeah, the trailer's only a minute long, so we'll just have a quick watch of the trailer. Yeah, so like I say, he's just in the right area, Sixtra. So yeah, like I say, this one is about a drug addict who gets arrested for a crime, and she gets put under house arrest, and she has to go back to her mother's house, and strange things sort of start happening within the house, and she starts to think the house is haunted, basically. And from there, we sort of follow her story, and as strange things start to happen, more and more starts to be uncovered. I won't spoil anything for you, but this one is definitely worth watching. New Zealand horror, it's really underrated, at least in my opinion. There's a lot of great New Zealand horror out there, and in this one, Morgana O'Reilly is just superb. She carries the whole film forward, and you're kind of captivated by her, just her toughness, and she has the best screams in any film that you've ever heard. It has one of the best ghosts that you'll ever see, a ghost called Eugene. And even today, whenever me and Emma hear a noise in the house, we tend to say, Eugene is knocking. But if you're not familiar with New Zealand horror, this is one of the best films to introduce yourself because it's not too gory. It's really well shot, really well directed, and it keeps you gripped throughout the whole film. There's a lot of good characters in it. There's some good twists that happen throughout the whole film. So this is one I definitely recommend if you haven't checked it out. Like I say, as far as I know, it's on Shudder in the UK, so hopefully it will be on Shudder in the US. And so the next film I was thinking of is a British one, and this one kind of caught me by surprise. and it's Cockneys versus Zombies. Zombie films are some of my favorites, especially comedy zombie films. Shaun of the Dead sort of started a new trend when it came out of comedy zombie films. This one kind of rides that, but it's very much different. Let's have a look at the trailer. So this one came out in 2012, and it's obviously UK film because Cockneys. It stars Rasmus Hardiker as Terry and Harry Treadway as Andy, and there are a couple of brothers who are talked into robbing a bank because their grandfather is in a sort of retirement home, and that retirement home is going to be closed down because it's going bankrupt. It also stars Michelle Ryan, who is sort of famous in the UK. She was in EastEnders, and you might recognize her from the remake of The Bionic Woman from several years ago. It also stars Alan Ford, who anybody who's watched the Guy Ritchie films like Snatch or Lock Stock, you might recognize him. It has Honor Blackman, who is one of the original Avengers, and Richard Briers, who is sort of quite famous in the UK because he was quite a big comedian in the 80s. The film itself is one of those I kind of came across when I was just looking for something to watch in bed, and on Amazon. I just saw it and I thought, well, you know what I mean? It sounds kind of crap and sounds a bit dodgy, probably perfect bedtime viewing. And it actually turned out to be a really fun film. It's quite gory. The special effects aren't particularly great. The acting is pretty good, though. The comedy is very good. It's no Shaun of the Dead, but if you're looking for something a little bit different and something a little bit fun, then this is the kind of thing that you would probably enjoy. A very strange kind of film, and it's got a lot of action in it, and it's got some really good characters. Definitely one to check out if you're looking for something a little bit different and something kind of fun and comedic. And with some good horror in it too. So the next film I was thinking of that is kind of underrated is Grabbers, and I know this one is on Shudder at the moment, at least in the UK. It's an Irish film from 2012, and it's basically about a little small town. People start to go missing and they start to find like eggs on the beach, and it turns out that these eggs are aliens. It stars Richard Coyle as Garda Sharon O'Shea, who you might recognize from a UK comedy called Coupling. Bronna Gallagher as a character called Una Mar, who you would recognize if you've seen The Commitments. She's one of the female singers from The Commitments, and she was also in Pulp Fiction. She was in the scene where Uma Thurman overdoses. Basically, the synopsis that you get from IMDb is when an island off the coast of Ireland is invaded by blood-sucking aliens, the heroes discover that getting drunk is the only way to survive. And that's basically the big twist. The aliens can't process alcohol, and so when they bite you, they get poisoned if they've got alcohol. This isn't some big twist. You kind of see it in the trailer. Let's have a quick look at the trailer now. Yeah, so that was Grabbers. And yeah, I completely agree, Chris. That Cockneys versus Zombies has the great British humor, just as Grabbers has the great Irish humor. It's very laid back and very sharp and very quick. And like I said, the whole alcohol thing isn't much of a twist because, as you could see, it's in the trailer. It's another one of those that kind of took me by surprise. This one's on Shudder UK, like I say, but I first came across it on Amazon, and it was another one like Cockneys versus Zombies, where I just saw it and I thought, you know what, this sounds a little bit different, and I put it on, and I ended up gripped to the whole thing, and me and Emma watched it together, and we were just in stitches throughout the whole film. It's very fast paced and very sharp, and the special effects are pretty good, and it's something a little bit different. It's not the kind of film you expect it to be from the trailer. It's funnier, and there's some good special effects. The characters in it are fantastic, and there's a lot of great acting in it. And who doesn't love the Irish accent? once it's in play, it's one of those accents that's kind of very friendly and kind of draws you in. So this one is definitely a one I would recommend. I would probably put this one ahead of Cockneys versus Zombies if you're looking for a good horror comedy, just because it's that little bit different. The next one I'd recommend is one called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And this is a US film from 2010. I think this might be on Shudder, but I can't remember. I really should have looked this one up. It stars Tyler Labine, who you might recognize if you've seen a show called Sons of Tucson, or you watched a TV show from about 10 or 15 years ago called Reaper, which is a show I'd love to talk about in the future because I think that's another really underrated show. And it also stars Alan Tudyk, who you might recognize from a show that's currently on at the moment called Resident Alien. If you're watching that, he was also in Firefly, the old sci-fi series from 10 or 15 years ago. Just slap the trailer on and then I'll give some thoughts on it. So that's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And the trailer captures it pretty well. It's basically a comedy of errors kind of film, but it's a very clever one. It's one that sort of turns the premise around, where normally with these kind of films what you have is the dangerous hillbilly family, sort of like Wrong Turn, the whole inbreeding family, and they're killers and they're going after the students, or the posh kids from the city. And this one kind of flips it on its head, where in this one it's the hillbillies who are the good guys. Even the posh college students aren't really the bad guys. It's all just based on a misunderstanding. They think that Tucker and Dale have kidnapped one of their friends, so they're trying to rescue her, and it all sort of goes on from there. And the kids are accidentally killing themselves in some of the most amusing ways. And it has one of the best wood chipper scenes. I mean, what's a good horror movie without a good wood chipper scene? And this has one of the best wood chipper scenes that's in any horror film. And Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine are just fantastic in this. They're so likable and so watchable. At the end, it kind of drags on a little bit because it becomes a little bit more serious and becomes a little bit more horror related, but it's still very enjoyable. It's definitely one to check out. It has a very dark sense of humor, so if you're not into a dark sense of humor, this one might not be so much for you. And it is kind of gory as well, so if gore isn't really your thing, this might not be one to check out. But it is one of the funniest films, and this is one of those where I try to get everybody to watch it. And like I say, it's very clever, and it turns all the tropes on its head. If you think of something like Cabin in the Woods, which turns all the tropes on its head, this one is very much a similar kind of film. But as far as I'm concerned, this one does it much better than Cabin in the Woods because it's just a much more enjoyable film. Definitely one to check out. And of all of these, this is probably my favorite film. I know these aren't in any order, but if they were going in any order, this would be my number one. And so next up, we have a film called The Final Girls, which is another very clever meta kind of film. It's from 2015 and it's a US film, and it's about a girl whose mother dies in a car crash, and she ends up kind of living with a step family, and the mother is sort of famous for a Friday the 13th style horror film, and they do this tribute to this film in the local cinema, and they invite her because she's the daughter. And something happens during the screening where a fire breaks out, and she ends up being transported into the film itself. And from there, we get a very comedic Friday the 13th, but it's also a sort of a meta kind of statement about those kind of slasher horror films. Let's just have a quick look at the trailer. Damn it, it would help if I unmuted the mic. So, my apologies for that. Apparently, the stream got terminated because of the Final Girls trailer, so I guess I'm going to have to proceed without playing any of the trailers. Um, Final Girls is a fantastic film. I feel like I shouldn't actually be promoting it now with them doing that to me, but it's definitely one worth checking out. It stars Teresa Farmiga, who as Max Cartwright, who you might recognize from something like The Nun. Hopefully, you should have sound now, Organics. Apparently, I forgot to unmute the mic after. Okay, nice one. Yeah. I guess I'm going to have to proceed without playing the trailers. But Final Girls, as you could see, it's sort of a comedic take on films like Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp. It's a very smart film that plays into the tropes of like the virginal final girl, the unstoppable killer. But there's a lot of really kind of clever writing in there and really good characters. Like I say, it stars Teresa Farmiga as Max Cartwright, who is the main character. You'll recognize her from The Nun, and it has Aaliyah Shakwat as Gertie Michaels, who you might recognize from stuff like Arrested Development. It also has Angela Trimber, who you might recognize if you watch The Good Place. She was the dress bitch in The Good Place. I think it was dress bitch. Um, but yeah, it's a really fun film and a very smart criticism of the sort of slasher genre. The the downside about it is that at the end, it it sort of prompts like it's going to have a sequel, and the sequel looks like it's going to be really good, but so far nothing. The films you missed were the films you missed, Arcanix, were Housebound, a New Zealand horror comedy from 2014, Cockneys versus Zombies, a UK zombie comedy from 2012, and an Irish comedy horror called Grabbers, which is a bit sci-fi-ish as well, about aliens coming into a small Irish town and invading, and them getting drunk to fight off the alien invasion. Okay, so the next film I was going to mention and play a trailer of is Serial Mum. I'm not sure I should take the chance of playing the trailer now, though. But it's a 1994 horror comedy from the USA, and it's made by John Waters, and it's probably one of his most accessible films. It's got Kathleen Turner, who stars as the character Mum, and it has Ricky Lake as the daughter Misty, and Matthew Lillard, who you probably would recognize as Shaggy from Scooby Doo or from Scream, and he stars as the son Chip. And basically, it's about a mother who is sort of this all American, kind of perfect housewife who wants to kind of be and portray the all American family, and she's a bit of a loon when it all boils down to it, and she's actually a bit of a serial killer. I first saw this one back when it first came out, and I wasn't really expecting much from it. Me and my mate Patrick rented it, and we sort of got a bunch of weed, and we decided to hang out and just watch a bunch of films. And this was one of the ones that we chose, and it really took us by surprise. It's got a really kind of zany atmosphere to it, and Kathleen Turner is absolutely fantastic in it. Um, Probably not for everybody, but like I say, it is John Waters' most accessible films. It's definitely no Pink Flamingos. So, um, but it's a very sharp kind of statement on the American way, the American dream of the nuclear family. Definitely worth checking out. Um, the next film I was going to play a trailer of is a Norwegian comedy from 2021 called The Trip. And this stars Numi Rapace, who you might recognize from the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and she's been in some recent sci-fi like um, What Happened to Monday. She's instantly recognizable when you see her. Ah, nice one. I've not met a lot of people that have seen Cockneys versus Zombies. What did you think of it, Arcanics? And yeah, the Kathleen Turner and Ricky Lake, they kind of stand out with that one. And it, like I say, it is from 1994, so it's very old. And there was a time when it was kind of popular and everybody was talking about Serial Mom, but it just kind of died a death, and nobody really talks about it now. And I'm kind of surprised by that because it is pretty much a classic. But back to The Trip. The Trip is a Norwegian comedy about a husband and wife who are having some problems in their marriage, and they decide to go out to a retreat to try and patch things up. But what's actually happened is that they've decided to plan to kill each other. And the first half of the film is about them and their attempts to kill each other. But about halfway through the film, there's a bit of a home invasion that happens with some criminals who have decided to break out of prison and go on the run. And they find this couple's kind of vacation home, and they go in and they invade it. And there's a lot of very strange and dodgy humor that goes on afterwards. Of course, if you're not one who is into sort of foreign films or non English films and don't like subtitles, this one might not be for you. But let's face it, most people I know don't give a damn about anything like that. And, a lot of you are actually bilingual. So this is definitely one worth watching out. And I think this one is on Shudder in the UK. I'm not sure about the US, or I'm not sure about in Europe, but I think most of Europe gets the same content on Shudder as Shudder UK. But this is one that will take you by surprise. This is another one that me and Emma put on when we were in bed, and we thought, we just kind of need something to watch to keep us entertained until we fall asleep. And this kept us awake. And yeah, I loved There's Something in the Bar, and I thought it was really funny. And I watched that on your recommendation, Sixtra. I can definitely relate to the watching stuff very stoned as well. Mechanics, it's basically how I watched most of the films I watch. But yeah, Richard Pryor in An Old People's Home, that is basically Cockneys versus Zombies. But check out The Trip if you want something a little bit different and a little bit dark. And so the next film I was going to play a trailer of and mention is Blood Diner. This is an American horror comedy from 1987, and it's sort of a follow-on from a Richard Corman horror from the 60s called Blood Feast. And this one is about two brothers who buy up a diner, and they're part of an Egyptian cult. And part of this Egyptian cult is kind of it involves kidnapping girls and sacrificing them and bringing this Egyptian goddess back to life. And it's it's a very strange film. If you're into sort of Tales from the Crypt kind of horror comedy, then Blood Diner is definitely one for you. Like I say, it's a 1987 horror film from the USA. Probably a little hard to find these days. I've not seen it on any streaming service. I used some slightly dodgy means to grab it and rewatch it recently. And so the next film I wanted to mention was a film called Bad Milo. Yeah, the trip isn't dubbed. The copy, when I watched it on Shutter, it was definitely in the original language, and I think it was like Swedish and Norwegian. I watched it with the subtitles, so you would actually probably understand most of it, Sixtra. And yes, that's the one. Organics. They sort of assemble all the different bits of like hookers and like women, and they bring about the Egyptian goddess. It's probably not for everybody, but I find it to be hilarious, and I think it's one of those that's kind of been forgotten and gone by the wayside. And when I watch channels like Ghost Pirate Entertainment or Stitched Together Productions, I don't really see them talking about this one. And I think anybody who's into a good horror comedy would really enjoy this one. And so the next one I want to mention is Bad Milo. And this one is hilarious and a little bit dark and strange. It's about a guy who gets it's from 2013 and it's a US film, and it's about a guy who he's having stomach problems, and he goes to the doctor and he finds out that he's got some sort of growth lodged in his stomach. And it turns out to be like a little demon, and it comes out his arse. Basically, there's no polite way to put this one. It comes out his arse, and it goes about and it kills anyone who makes him stressed. It stars Ken Marino, who you might recognize if you watch something like Party Down. Um, You'd probably recognize him once you see him. It also has Gillian Jacobs, who was in Community, and Patrick Warburton, who most people probably know. He was the original Tick in the live action Tick. This one is very funny, and it's another one that took me and Emma by surprise. We just kind of grabbed it thinking this sounds a bit goofy, but we ended up really enjoying it. And the final one that I want to mention is Redneck Zombies. This is probably not for everybody. If you know who Trauma are, then you'll know the kind of film that I'm talking about. It's very badly made. It's filmed on video, or it's shot on video. But it is absolutely hilarious. It's a 1989 USA film. It doesn't really star anybody famous, but it has some of the greatest humor in it. It's about basically rednecks. They run like a little moonshining business, and an army truck drives by and it accidentally drops this barrel of toxic waste, and the redneck moonshiners empty it out and they use it as a still to create their moonshine, and which infects the whole town and turns them into zombies. And like most good zombie films, you have the city dwellers who have come there on holiday, and they get caught up in this zombie invasion. It's a very dark film in places as well, and it's very disturbing. The juxtaposition between the comedy and some of the dark scenes in it kind of takes you by surprise. Like, for example, there's a scene where one of them delivers the moonshine to somebody, and he goes in, and it's basically these two serial killer kind of people, and they have this woman strapped to the sofa, and they're watching a film. They're watching on TV, and it's basically eggs being sorted out and chicks being slaughtered. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of doing, Sixtra. It's probably going to be best if I just use. I wasn't expecting that to happen. I figured trailers are trailers. They're pretty much in the public, so I wouldn't get in any problems. And so I'll plan that slightly better for next week's stream. I'm thinking of doing this every Sunday at 9:30. Yeah, Toxic Avenger is one of my favorite comedies, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to the reboot that's coming out soon. It looks very different, but I'll give it a chance. But yeah, check out Redneck Zombies if you like Toxic Avenger. Like I say, there's some very disturbing scenes in it, but it's also a very funny film. I remember getting this was back in my video bootlegging days, and I just got this tape that had Redneck Zombies on it. And I didn't know what to expect and put it on, and I was in stitches. I was very high watching it, of course, like you do when you're younger. But I love it. I even went out and bought the DVD, and yeah, it's an amazing film. So that's my top 10. Or not top 10, those are 10 films 10 horror comedies I would recommend. So just to go through them again: Housebound, 2014 from New Zealand; Cockneys vs. Zombies, 2012 from the UK; Grabbers, 2012 from Ireland; Tucker and Dale, 2010 from the US; The Final Girls, 2015 from the US, which kind of killed my stream apparently, but Serial Mom, the most accessible John Waters film from 1994 in the USA; The Trip, a Norwegian film from a couple of years ago; Blood Diner, from a US film from 1987; Bad Milo, a comedy from 2013 in the US; and Redneck Zombies, a trauma film. It's not actually trauma, it's more trauma released, and that's from 1989 in the USA. And sorry again for the break in the stream. I really was not expected that. Yeah, I'm wondering if that's what it is as well, Arcana, because I just let the trailer play. I'm wondering if maybe if I paused it every 30 seconds just to talk about something, it might not happen. I'll have to see how it goes. But thank you all for tuning in. Like I say, I'm going to be doing this every Sunday. Yeah, check out Grabbers. You'll love it. It's such a strange and funny film. But I'll see you next Sunday. I'll have something different planned, and I'll just take it from there. Like I say, I'm going to move these to my film channel. You can find the link in my, description of what my main channel. I'm gonna kind of stitch these two together and then repost them on the film channel. So thanks. I'll catch you all on Twitter or on YouTube. I'll be streaming my usual philosophy stream on Thursday. So I'll see you guys later. Hope your day treats you well, or your evening treats you well, and your week treats you well. I'll see you all soon. Bye.